This is the last of 3 videos in the watercross image editing series. The first being what is the best composition and the best image to edit. The second, simple ways to edit your pictures on the iPhone. The third one is discussing what makes an image art. This picture is called Watercross, and I want to break down why I think it's a successful image. But I think that first, before I say anything else, you have to acknowledge that what you think is a great piece of art is completely subjective. It depends on the person. Each individual has a different take on what they think is successful. The first thing I want to really get into with this is that when I'm creating an image like this, I'm looking for a feeling. There's some of it's visual, some of it's emotional. So, for example, I call this watercross because the cross element in this is just suggests to some, it'll just suggest to some people that there's a religious iconography to it, and that triggers a certain emotional response, as does the warm sky and the sun coming up. All those bits and pieces are important to take into consideration. But let's talk about the actual picture itself. So the first thing is the rule of thirds. And so if you look at it, I have 1/3 on the bottom, loosely 2/3 on the top. So for whatever reasons, humans like images that are off center like that. We like odd numbers. So 1/3, 2/3, filling the frame with what you want in the picture. But at the same time, I like to give a lot of breathing room. So again, if you look at the cross here in the middle, there is all this space around it for people to just take it all in. It's called breathing room. Sometimes it's called negative space. Sometimes it's just called empty space. It just depends on what you want to, how you want to call it. But I call it breathing room. There's room for the eye to move around. It's not so intensely focused. You have room to just enjoy the picture. So I fill the frame with what I want, but I leave room in it for people to be able to appreciate and enjoy what's there. And framing. Let's talk about the framing aspect of it. Again, my main subject is kind of this area right here. So we framed it in with a lot of areas directing us towards that point, coming in like that. Now, one thing to keep in mind that when I photograph, I like to put the brightest subject in the back. That's kind of a thing I like to do. It creates a three-dimensional experience. If somebody's looking at your picture and they have to look further into it to find the brightest area, for whatever reasons, humans are drawn to bright things with our eyes. So by putting it in the back, it creates depth within the picture. Also, let's talk about the color. In here, there's blues, yellows, and reds. Those are our three primary colors, and you can create a certain kind of contrast or three-dimensionality with that, and also think of it as a rule of thirds. It's a different type of rule of thirds by using the three primary colors. There are secondary colors, but the primaries. Let's talk about another layer of this is leading line. So if you look at the dock, it leads you straight to the back. So that's one leading line. You look at the clouds, they lead you into the center and to the back. It's another leading line. You look at the clouds on the left, another leading line. The water here getting smaller in scale is another leading line. Everything around it leads you to the back of the picture. So those are all leading lines, bringing you into more depth within the picture. Repetition wise, all right, think of it this way. For whatever reason, we like repetition in our pictures. So if you go off the dock, there is a repetitive and scale shift within the dock. It's the same pattern, but it gets smaller, so it leads you deeper into it. The water has a repetitive action of the waves. That'll continue to bring you deeper into it as well. So those are another parts of it that make it a successful image. I want to talk about shadow for a second and silhouetting. So if you look at the dock here, you can see all the way around it, there is a shadow. There's a dark area that goes around the dock. Not only does that create contrast, but it also creates depth. It's like the dock is floating, and so it gives it more three-dimensional experience. Again, this is what people like to see. Visual weight. So if you look at the picture this way, again, this is kind of an odd rule of thirds. This area has a lot of weight to it because it's brighter, the colors are warmer, as opposed to the outside areas, which are colder and there's less information there. And so that creates another rule of thirds. It's a subtle way of adding depth into the picture. Ultimately, again, my goal is to create an image that people are going to want to get involved in. I want to talk about doorways, and that's what I call the visual openings for people to enter into the picture. The dock is the most obvious, but there's a secondary one here, which is just the brightest part of the picture. So you enter into it, and because everything around is darker, it frames it nicely. So when somebody ends up here, it's harder to leave that space. So you tend to linger on the picture longer, which creates opportunities for people to make a stronger connection to the image. There's also another aspect. There's motion in here. So it's kind of implied with all the angles and lines. We know in our minds that clouds move. We know that water moves. But having these little waves in here, all these waves that run through this, also add motion to it. So it's a static two-dimensional picture, but it feels like there's motion in it. And that all adds, again, to the successfulness of the picture. It comes down to, this is what I wanted to say in a picture. I saw this dock the night before and was intrigued by it. And then when I woke up the next day and the clouds were doing this incredible colorful stuff, it just made sense to me to create this feeling of a picture that is, I don't want to say otherworldly, but spiritual, I guess, in a sense, that it takes you somewhere else. And that's what I wanted to do. So the successful aspect of this has to do with so many subtle compositional rules. It has to do with the visual language. It's very symbolic, and understanding the symbolism of certain things, the warmth of colors, the framing, the diagonals, the subject matter, all those add to a successful picture. So you guys, let me know what you think of this. Send me some comments, like it or don't like it, but make them, critique it. Give me your feedback. And if there's a picture you like that's on my website or on my social media, let me know. I'll take a look at it, and perhaps I'll do a video breaking that picture down. Thanks again, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.